Hello everybody and welcome to your first C++ programming for beginners tutorial. I want to give a brief introduction and then get right into the action. So what I want to do with this tutorial series is make a C++ tutorial geared towards people that want to get into game programming. And what I mean by that is not that we're going to go in on the second tutorial and write a functional game, because frankly, game programming is one of the hardest forms of programming. I would argue that it is the hardest form of programming, simply because it involves so much math and work with graphics. But have no fear, because we're going to start from the very, very basics of programming and work our way up into making something that looks like a real functional game. I will say that it's not going to be easy, because game programming isn't easy, as I already mentioned. It's going to probably span mini tutorials, and we'll have to cover basic programming first. But I want to try to keep even my basic programming tutorials geared toward gaming. I'll try to explain the concepts in a way that relates to game development and game programming. And the reason I want to do this is because all the tutorials that I tried to watch on YouTube when I was learning, um, there wasn't really much on game programming. It was mostly stuff about, like, writing employee databases and stuff like that. And I didn't find that very interesting, so I'm going to try to keep this lively and entertaining to people that want to get into game development. Okay, so without further ado, let's go into things. What you're looking at right now is an IDE, which stands for Integrated Development Environment. It's pretty much just something where you can have all your work in one place, and it has handy little buttons to do stuff like compile your code and run your code without having to manually do it, and I'll explain what that means later. But for now, let's just download Codeblocks, which is the IDE we'll be using. I'll show you how to download it. I'm going to go to codeblocks.org, and I'll put this link in the description as well. Go to the Downloads tab up here. You want to download the binary release. And this second one, the version doesn't really matter because it'll change if you're watching this video in the future. But you want the one that says mingwsetup.exe. If you don't download this one, you won't be able to run your program. So we'll go to SourceForge. I've already done it. I've gone through before this tutorial and made sure that the default options are okay, and they are, so just go ahead and download it. And okay, now that you have Codeblocks downloaded, we'll go right in here and get to work. First thing we're going to want to do is create a new project. You can also do it up here if you go to File, New, Project. Want an empty project. I'm going to call mine C++ for beginners. Feel free to call yours whatever you want. Save it wherever you want. Next, and the default options are fine. Okay, so now we have this blank screen. That's nice. And then over here we have our workspace, and we see our project we just created. First thing we're going to want to do is just create a new source file. So we're going to do empty file. You do want to save it in your active project. Call it main.cpp. This is just saying it's a C++ source code file. Okay, and here we are. We can see on the side that we have a source file that is called main, just like we named it. And I'm just going to go ahead and start writing the most basic program we can have. It's called a hello world program. There's very little to it, and even though there's very little to it, there's still some stuff in here that you won't understand at first, even won't understand for probably 10 tutorials at least. But that's okay. Just go with it and know that this is the framework that you need to make any C++ program. You'll just need this to start writing code. Okay, so the first thing we're going to want to type is #include iostream in brackets like that, the less than greater than brackets. And what this is saying is that we want to include the input-output stream library. Don't worry about what any of that means right now, but it pretty much just gives us functionality to use stuff that is built into the C++ language. And then the next thing we'll want to do is type int main parentheses and then open and close curly braces. You'll see this in any program you ever write because this is telling us that this is where our program starts. The main function is always where your program is going to start. This isn't true in every language, but in C++, this is always true. And don't worry about what the parentheses mean or the int means yet. We'll talk about that when we talk about functions in a later tutorial. But this right here, you need to begin writing any C++ program. So if you just want to memorize what this looks like, that's perfectly fine if you don't understand any of it right now. Just know that you need it. Okay, so now I'm going to write std : cout less than quotes hello world semicolon. Okay, don't get overwhelmed by this. It's probably completely confusing to you right now, but I'll make sure to clear things up. What this std cout means is that we're using this cout object. Cout is an object. Many things in C++ are objects. I don't want you to worry exactly what an object means right now. We'll talk about that in a much later tutorial, but know that you can use objects to do stuff, pretty much. And it's in the standard namespace. And I wanted to write it like this at first just to show you that this is in fact a way to call stuff from the standard namespace. But when you're making a lot of calls, it gets a little bit wordy, and I like to go up here at the top and write using namespace std, and this will make it where you can use objects in that namespace without actually writing the long introduction to them. And this program right here will compile and run. Let's do it. You can go up here and hit build and then run, or you can just hit this build and run button, which is what I'll do. And there we go. We see that we have a program that says hello world, and then it'll tell you return 0, any key to continue. And actually, just for good measure, I'm going to go ahead and put return 0 right now. I come from a C programming background, and this was standard when I was learning programming, and I still see it extremely often when writing C++ code. I think it's just generally good practice to signify the end of your program. What this is saying, it's going to return 0 to the function and say we're done. 0 means success. In this case, if I returned -1, it wouldn't say unsuccessful, but returning -1 is generally a bad sign in programming. But 0, we're good. So yeah, this is just a hello world program. This is about as basic as it gets. We can write anything we want in these double quotes. We can write let's learn game programming. Oh, I can't type today. Build and run this. There we go. We can see what we just wrote. One more thing I want to point out is that you can call this as many times as you want. I can just write gibberish in here, and this will print it. But see, here's an issue. If you want to write more than one thing, how do we make it where it doesn't get crammed together on the same line? Well, what we do is we call another object that's built into the C++ language called endl. And actually endl is a function, not an object, sorry. It's a function. Don't worry about these terms right now. I just want to make it clear that cout is an object and endl is a function. And just remember that. Don't worry about what it means yet. But what endl does, I'll put it here. It's the endline function. And when we run this, you'll see exactly what it does. It ends the line and creates a new line. So you can do some cool stuff with this. You can just format. I mean, I can write whatever I want. I can write something here, and it'll just... Also, you can combine. You can just use as many less than symbols as you want with this. I can write hello world in the middle of all this gibberish. make a space, then write another indel. Right, oops, indel. And you can see right there, hello world. I know that was a little bit of an exaggerated example, but I just wanted to show you the stuff you could do with cout early on. Also, any line of code, well, I shouldn't say any, but almost any line of code that you write is going to end in a semicolon, so just get in the habit of forcing yourself to put semicolons at the end of everything, and I'll make sure to explain in detail when you don't need to use a semicolon in later tutorials, but for now, for our purposes, we're going to put a semicolon at the end of every line. And I think that that's going to conclude it for this tutorial. I want to keep these around 10 minutes, so I've already gone over for this tutorial. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time.